And then the other bit of genius is that the valve cap they give us is quite flashy, but the top of it is actually the valve core removal tool. It's the wrench size you need to remove that valve core. Okay, welcome back to the workshop kitchen. So here we are. I'm going to talk about tubeless today. So tubeless means the tire that has no tube inside of it. Like your car tire essentially has no tube inside of it. And the advantages of a tubeless tire is that it essentially eliminates the ability of pinch flats. It'll the sealant inside will self-seal punctures of about 4 millimeters or so, 1/8 of an inch will tend to be solve that hole for you. So little punctures, pinch flats typically tend to go away. You tend to get a lot less flats with a tubeless tire setup versus a tube tire setup. But has its own faults. Sometimes they're hard to get set up, hard to get seated, hard to make them hold air for a long period of time. Tend to require a little more upkeep. You gotta keep your eye on the pressure a little more often, as they can leak down much faster than a tube can. But there are a lot of pros. The biggest pros, there's way less flats, especially in areas that have lots of thorns and that sort of stuff, like in Arizona and those kind of areas. You get flats all day long, and stands can help. Stands sealant or a tire sealant of some sort can help solve that problem without having to resort to huge thick tubes and tire defender strips and all that nonsense. Keep tire weight nice and low, but gain a lot of benefits. You also get more volume. Taking the tube out of it increases the volume of the tire a little more, so it has a little more ability to maneuver, and there's less friction between the tube and the tire, so the tire can then roll faster on the ground. So the first thing you got to do when you're converting to tubeless is ensuring you can do it without a tubeless tire and without a tubeless rim. They just leak down faster and not quite as safe, especially under high cornering loads. The B's are a bit different on a tubeless tire and tubeless rim, so they hook a little harder. So when you're leaning the tire over, it's not going to pull off as fast. And that's part of that. There's also two different styles. You have a tubeless tire, it's called a tubeless ready system, which involves a piece of tape and a valve stem and some sealant. The other option is called a UST tire and tire and rim. So the rim and tire are a system together where the bead interlock is of a certain shape. They don't require a sealant. This whole system of UST is that it would hold air with no pressure change for 24 hours, which is pretty cool. A sealant will help solve punctures, but is not necessarily required to help it seal the air itself in. UST came out in the early 2000s. It was kind of the first one with Mavic really pushed that one, but that has faded away as tubeless. Everyone else has become much more mainstream, and pretty much every bike you buy now that's over that $2,000 mark will be tubeless ready. You need some tires and some tape. So when you're doing it, you're gonna need to tape your rim to cover the spoke holes in that rim, right? That makes the rim bed airtight. So you can use a variety of tapes. This is most of them are 3M base fiber tape. This is a blue one. That's what Roval and DT Swiss and Giant tend to have in their kits. The other option is like a weird tan kind of taupe one, which comes from stands, no tubes, which everyone and their dog has probably seen in stores everywhere. Very, very similar in their application. The stands one's a little bit thicker, a little bit thinner with the blue stuff. I don't personally see the difference in how they work. I've heard that the stands one is better against spoke puncture, but who knows. Other option, I use this stuff for standard wheels. So your standard 27.5, 26, 29-inch wheel, that's going to have an inner rim width of 30 millimeters or less. Mostly because it's hard to find this stuff in 30 mils or bigger. Even 30 mils is hard to find sometimes. So when it gets bigger, I use this stuff, which is literally just a 40 millimeter wide electrical tape. It works well. Just some standard PTFE rubberized tape. Works really well. I use it on my plus bikes, so rims that are 30 mils or wider are really hard to find tape this wide. This comes in what you want. And the key to these things is that it has to be airtight, and I like them to be a little bit stretchier, so you can get a much more uniformed, tight strip of tape on it. Other option you've got is duct tape. Been around since Second World War. It works really well for this application. Envy, you may have seen that brand around. They use a duct tape. It comes called Gorilla Tape. It's airtight. It's sealant resistant. The Envy stuff has an Envy logo inside of it, but it is just a rebranded Gorilla Tape. And it comes in the right widths for their rims. They got a custom cut to match the rim set. But you can cheat that by literally just cutting a strip of tape like we have here in the rim width that I needed at the moment in time. Pros and cons to both. This one's a little more durable yet again. This one's probably the least durable, but I find it works really well. And then the most common is your standard tape. Once you've chosen your tape and you've got the rim taped up, I always do 2 laps around the rim. So I'm going to start, this one here's already been done, but I start, you see the valve hole is here, I start the tape here, or here, about 4 inches past the valve stem. I'm going to go around, and then around again, and I'm going to finish it over here as well. So there's always an overlap on where the tape is starting and getting over the valve stem. That way there's just less areas for air to sneak around the tape and get inside and be a pain. You also want to make sure when you're doing it, sometimes your tape isn't 100% wide from left to right, so you can do a pass that's tight to this side, come back, do a second pass so it's tight to the other side, which is pretty handy. The key is you want to make sure that the tape goes from the edge all the way to the edge. So it's an airtight barrier all the way around. So you've taped it, then I always take a little, really sharp and pokey, and I poke a teeny little hole for the valve stem. Once that's in there, then I go a little tiny hole with a pen, like a little pinprick. Then I get my valve stem, and then I take my valve stem, and then I force it through. That way it's exactly the shape, exactly kind of the shape and the hole size that I need. It seats nice and tight that way. Valve stems come in main flavor and then 2 tertiary flavors. So your main one is a standard valve stem. It's just a valve stem, like so. Has a little rubber seat on the top that sits in the rim bed. Helps give you like a super airtight seal that way. It goes through the rim. O-ring goes on top. If it has an O-ring, not all of them have O-rings. Then a lock ring goes over top of that. Your standard press the valve lock ring, like so, goes on top of that. And it just presses that thing nice and tight against the rim seat. So it's tight, airtight. Air tightness is the key to this operation. So that's your first valve stem. Typically like 12, I don't know, $8 to $15, $12 on average perhaps. Other option, I've used these in the past. This is what I call a ghetto tubeless valve. Literally just a valve out of an old tube that I had. I just cut it out of the tube. Pretty haphazard. I was just trying to get it going for a ride. I didn't have any more tube. A tube I had was broke, had a puncture in it. Wanted to go tubeless. I had this, popped it in, put some sealant in. Problem was solved. It works pretty well. Lasted me for about a year, in fact, till I had to do some other work on the bike, and I put some real valves in it just because of, me being picky sometimes. But that worked pretty well. Pretty stuck on that. And that's a ghetto valve stem. Super common. I've seen it in lots and lots of times. Third option you have at the moment is this pretty flashy unit here from E13. They have built this pretty ingenious little setup here. So instead of having the lock ring, the problem with the lock ring is that when it goes through the rim, I have to tighten this lock ring as tight as I can get it so that it seats this in the rim bed itself. Often it requires a pair of pliers or something to get that super, super tight. Now that has issue is that when you get a flat somewhere, you don't have pliers to get this lock ring off, you're never getting it out. And that can be a real nightmare. So what I do, typically to have to do that, I'll lock it on with a pair of pliers, and then I'll back it off and put a little bit through my fingers so I know that it's movable. Once the tire is seated and sealed up, you can remove that a little more tension so it's not super tight. But what E13 has done is gotten rid of the locking altogether and just given us this whole, it's a 2-piece system. So this whole piece comes off. This is your inner valve core, or inner valve stem, outer valve stem. This acts as the lock ring. I can grab it with my whole hand. It's quite large. And then it threads together, like so. And the other advantage of it is that on the back side of it, you can see in there. It's a bit hard to see, to be fair. But this here is an Allen key. It fits a 4mm Allen key, like so. And you can just thread it in there, nice and tight. Then you get it out, you just unthread it with the Allen key. It's super clever. Works really, really well. And then the other bit of genius is that the valve cap they give us is quite flashy, but the top of it is actually the valve core removal tool. It's the wrench size you need to remove that valve core. That valve core comes out. Out it comes. Pretty clever. So you always have it on you, which is pretty handy. If you forget it at home, so you never know. If you're trying to get a reseat on the trail side, getting that valve core out to pump up with the hand pump can be pretty critical. So we've done that. This time around, I'm going to use E13s. I went and bought these. Here in New Zealand, these things are pretty entertaining. They're like $40 for a set of valve stems, which is, double what one of these is going to cost you, essentially. Well, pricey, but quite flashy, quite nice, big head, It's got the removable valve core. Just a lot of little features in that. Like a lot of like time and energy went into making this crafty little valve stem. So I think it's pretty cool. Comes in black, red, and blue, I think. But pumped to try it out. I decided to go with E13 theme this time on this bike I'm trying to build up. So E13 valve stems. I got some E13 tire plasma, which is their tire sealant, and some E13 tires. But the sealant, there are a variety of options. This is tire plasma from E13. Again, it's going to be a liquid latex of some sort, eco-friendly. Doesn't have any sort of alcohols inside of it or ammonias. It's in here. It stands no tubes. You've probably seen those things everywhere. Everyone with their dogs is sending tubes around. It was kind of the first foray, the first brand to do it, to be in the tubeless fluid market, sealant market. There's also a brand called Cafe Latex. There's a brand called Orange Seal. There's a whole slew of them out there. The only one that I find that's quite different is the Cafe Latex. They call it that because it makes like latte foam, essentially. So when it's in the tire, it's shaking around, it's bubbling and frothing. So that when it's in the tire, your tire's up here, rim is down here, the whole thing is filled with this like sealant foam. So that everything it's in contact with the whole interior surface. Whereas with this stuff, when you're spinning it, with centrifugal force, that moves to the outside of the tire only. So it won't seal holes in the bottom of the rim bed. So if you get a spoke puncturing through, it's way, way more rare, but it is a point of difference that the Cafe Latex stuff does do. But I do find that it dries up faster, and gives this kind of weird like hot dog inside, because a big hollow tube that it makes over time, it seals up and dries out. All sealant requires to be swapped. Every 6 months or so, or depending on how much you're riding it, or how hot it is and whatnot, they will self-dry. They'll just become a dry film inside the tire. So every 6 months or so, you use to pull the rim apart, put some fresh sealant in there. If you're picky about it, you can peel the old stuff out, keep the weight of the tire down, but it will dry up, and then if it happens, it'll puncture, it won't seal, and that'll be that. Often you'll see them in the workshop. I'll pull the tire off, and we call them stanimals. It's like a little like latex blob that's living inside the tire. It's as hard as a rock, and it pulls it out. You got some fresh stuff in there. So I'm picking the 15 sealant this time around, just because I want something different. It does have a bit of like a bit of grit in it, like almost like a glittery kind of thing, and that helps it get to the hole and just plug the hole faster, so that the latex stuff can dry. That doesn't plug the hole in itself. It acts kind of like a clotting mechanism. It's pretty crafty. And then once you have that done, that all goes over here. Then we have, how are we going to inflate it? So I have a hand pump, which it's a mountain bike hand pump. There are differences between mountain bike and road bike ones. Mountain bike hand pumps typically are a lower pressure, so a max of like 90 or 70 psi, because you never get that high anyways in a mountain bike tire. And tend to be a bigger volume, so they're a bigger girth and diameter, and it gets more air per pump. A road bike pump is going to be typically much narrower, so it has less volume, but it goes to much higher pressure. Right, so you can get with a human strength, you can get to 110 psi in a road pump, but on a mountain bike, it takes you 1,000 pumps to get enough volume into the tire. Same with floor pumps. This is my current floor pump. It is a Joe Blow Mountain. Topic Joe Blow pump, been around for dog's years. They always are my personal favorite durability-wise. Their head is super clever, just pops on, flick a lever away. You can do press the valve or Schrader valve. But this is the mountain pump. Like I said, the floor pump, this one has a huge volume, and it helps seat tubeless tires easier. But I also think today, which we're going to try, I can seat this tire on this rim with this sealant with this pump. I don't think tubeless is that hard to seat up. It can be a pain sometimes, but if you follow some simple steps, I think that gets easier to do than you will think it is. So that's that for right now. That's a selection of tubeless items. In the next video, I'm going to do a tubeless install. We're going to put a valve stem in, we're going to put some sealants inside of it, and we're going to put a tire on, inflate it to riding pressure with a hand pump. That's what I think is possible. Alright? Remember to subscribe, like the video, give me any questions you got, let me know what you think. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of options here in terms of what we can talk about and what is needed to go tubeless and the pros and cons of it. But yeah, let's go from there. Alright? Have a great day, guys. Cheers.